It is said for women that typically physical affection automatically must lead to sexual encounters. And we believe that if you're dealing with this in your relationships currently, that it's something worth talking about. So let's talk about that.
For the good men listening whose wives won't let you touch them, won't give a hug or a kiss or be playful, it is because we are terrified that affection will lead to sex. We won't give and express affection to a good man and how they need that in a relationship because of our fear and how shut down we are to sex. And we can't receive what our husband will do for us to show affection because we think they want something, and that something being sex. Well, you're only doing that because you want to get lucky. And that's how walled off we are and shut down to ourselves and shut down in the relationship.
Put it on pause here. That's so interesting. Read some of the comments. No sex, no dinner, and no clean. That's what modern feminism is. Fellas, bottom line, don't ever marry a woman that you truly know 100% you're not her number one choice. Okay, if you're number two, she will never love you, period. Don't ever sign up to be number two. I don't know what that's for.
I can tell you, but go
okay,
ahead.
okay. Hey, you're gonna put us on game. I like that. If you don't have any of that, you don't have a marriage. You're just roommates. Act accordingly. Wow. A large number of men are starting to low-key hate women. This is all in the recent 24 hours of us reacting to this. What is so wrong with sex inside of a marriage? What is so wrong with your husband wanting sex with his wife? If your wife hates you so much that she is terrified of the idea of sex with you, leave her. Imagine waking up to a random person on the street and expecting them to provide shelter, lifestyle, funding for the rest of your life, whilst constantly telling them, I don't owe you anything. And then taking half their savings and continue to be paid when leaving. If you remove gender, it becomes apparent how ridiculous this is. Pure gaslighting. Marriage was a working relationship. Every part had their duty. Now women have no responsibility or duties anymore, but men have thousands of them. Many years ago, I received this advice. If it flies, floats, or fluffs, I'm going to censor myself there, rent it. Men are in love, women are in business. Marriage is very dangerous to a man's opinion or options, which makes him weak and even less sexually attractive to his wife. I mean, this goes on and on. 171 comments. This has 793 likes. If I were to click on the views, it might have, close to hundreds of thousands, just based on the likes there. So let's talk about this, man. I'm gonna leave the floor open to you. You, again, as we have known on this channel, 30 years of marriage. You're in the game. You have counseled a lot of married people. You've been in this space, so I really want to hear some of your opening thoughts to this.
This is a good one. So first of all, I want to, we are, and I cannot express this enough for those of you who are watching our channel, to first of all, hopefully be blessed, to be honest with you, and to get some insight in something that at least will make you think and you could walk away with. So the first thing I want to do is that we want to do what the scripture says. It tells us to speak the truth in love. And so oftentimes we're giving you a truth from our perspective, but I'm going to give you, as Sean alluded to, some truth from my own experiences with other people over the past 33, 34 years that I've been doing ministry, coaching, and, attempting to mentor and counsel people to the scope that I had the ability to, and then being married myself as well for 30 plus years. So listen, to the ladies out there, first and foremost, I do want to say this to them because I do want to be fair, Sean. There are some women out there who have had traumatic past. They've had trauma in the area of sexual relations, and it's been very difficult and is very difficult for them to overcome some of these issues that she was speaking of in her video. So that's the first thing that I want to say. So it's easy when we see a video like that, right, to just lump every woman into that and be like, yeah, like you saw many of the men who were speaking on there. This isn't to minimize any of the man's thoughts and feelings too, because to be quite honest with you, in the culture that we live in, it's 100% an issue. It is in fact a problem. And when I say it's a problem from this perspective. And I've known of women who are like, hey, listen, I had my kids, get off me. Like, you did what I needed you to do. Like, now my kids are my life and you kind of just need to be here to help me raise them. But in terms of affection or things along those lines, we're not doing that. Like, you gave me what I needed. And that's a fact. Those are real things that happen. And so I've had that conversation with many people too. But there are some things that we have to consider, though. Again, that there are women who, prior to maybe being in a healthy relationship, were in a really bad relationship, a really bad sexual relationship, and so that has probably led to them dealing with some challenges and some struggles in this area. Now, I want that to be a point and not an excuse, if that makes sense to you, right?
Okay.
So I think that we should make that more of a point and not an excuse for not this, because this is where I would go when I'm talking to somebody. I'm like, hey, and I've done this when I've working with a couple. I'm saying, okay, get that, totally understand that. So my question to you is, are you willing to go get the help and support you need to be able to overcome the difficulty and the challenge, or work through the trauma that you had in previous relationships, sexual relationship, or whether you were out there, just being loose, giving up, booty to whoever, whenever you felt like it or whatever, whatnot. Now you're like, you feel shame, you feel all this other kind of good stuff. Are you willing to go work on that? Because if you're not willing to go work on that, then you're really saying that your marriage doesn't matter, because you can't ask your spouse to say, well, you have a problem and you're not going to do anything about it, and you're telling me that I just need to be okay. I think that's pretty much unfair. I think that's grossly unfair, to be quite honest with you. So there are those factors, right? There are people who have been, again, sexually assaulted. And we need to recognize that not everybody fits in a category that she was speaking of, but she is speaking of a large swath of women, however. So we do want to say that too, right? To be fair, she is speaking of a large swath of women who are married, again, who are like, hey, I don't really have time to do this. Now, there's another factor in here that I think is important for us to also share, Sean, and that's this. There are women who, when they get into their menopausal years, perimenopausal, which happens prior to menopause, different things along those lines. Hey man, things don't work the same way as they used to. And there's a lot. Their body is going through a lot, and men have to recognize that. And I think it's important to learn how to be in a relationship where you can have healthy enough conversations, which is what I was going to end with, and then I'll let you jump in, or if you have another question, let me know. But I think that one of the biggest challenges, man, is that men don't have enough, and women don't have enough relationship and connection, man, to be able to have deep enough and sincere enough conversations around their sexuality. Oh, there was one more thing I forgot to say that I wanted to add in there that's problematic for a lot of women. Now, you have to think about this again. So in the church, here's what we say. So what we say, Sean, is we say, we tell girls specifically, keep your mini skirt past your knees. Don't wear a shirt that's revealing. Don't do this, don't do that. And then we send girls to purity conferences. We don't send boys to purity conferences. We send girls to purity conferences. Then girls have to wear purity rings. So now you have to understand her whole messaging, her whole life is don't, and you're the problem. Don't, you're the problem. Sex is nasty. Don't, you're the problem. And then what happens is, Sean, is we've said all of this, and then this woman gets married, and guess what? Now she has to tear down everything that has been put in her mind. She taking off her clothes in front of a man, being in the bed with the man, and all of a sudden she's got to do all of this stuff, but she's been programmed to believe that all of this was nasty. Our problem is, in the church specifically, is that instead of teaching that sex is from God, and in the appropriate context that sex is beautiful and it's right, that being a marriage, those should be your first encounters. I don't care what anybody else on the air has to say. I don't care where you came from. I don't care, but your first encounters supposed to be with your spouse, husband or wife. God intended it for that way, because what happens is all of that stuff we're talking about, those previous relationships, start to leak in, man, into these relationships, Sean, and it starts to become more and more difficult and more challenging for this to now go away, because that experience stays with you, right? Because you didn't get that experience with your husband. So when your husband comes and he comes to you in a loving way, and he's there and he's coming to hug you, your initial thought, especially if you were in a previous relationship on that, is, oh, he wants something. Not, oh, he's loving me, he's hugging me. You heard how she said, like, you just reject him. You'll be like, hey, like, I know the only reason why you're being nice to me is because you want me to go. And that, man, that comes from somewhere else. There's so much stuff I could say on this. The last part, and then we can keep going if you have thoughts. The last part is, there are generations of women, moms, grandmothers, big mamas, aunties, friends of your mothers, all them, they raise up these little girls, and they give these little girls these ideas about a man. So she goes into it also with a jaundiced eye, already looking at this man as somebody who only wants something from her. Not that this is our way of connecting, because it is our way of connecting. Her whole ideal is he just wants to have sex. And unfortunately, man, that is a bad thing for everybody involved. And I've seen it wreak some havoc on relationships.
Yeah, I love all of that. I always love preferencing where I am and the perhaps level of authority I could potentially speak to such a subject like this. No, your boy is not married. I am currently a virgin as we speak, of course, waiting till marriage.
Good for you.
And
Good for you.
this is it.
Bravo.
Yeah, appreciate you. And again, I don't, of course, for the audience out there, I don't say that to brag or make anybody feel awful.
Well, I'm bragging on you. I'm bragging on you. Keep it in your pants until you walk down the aisle with some woman who says yes, who you put a ring on it,
right?
And you really got something to provide for her. Then you can have and ask her for her body, and she can ask you for yours.
Absolutely, yeah. I choose to honor that. And of course, we'll have a plethora of conversations on those things. In terms of this, this is something that I'm not new to hearing. I've heard this quite a bit, and I even want to give a perspective to things. One, in the terms of dating. Okay, this is actually something that actually is really prevalent in the dating space as much as it seems to be in the marital space, but more from the perspective of women who feel completely unsafe in today's culture to just do the small things because of how they're viewing men due to experiences that should be acknowledged, that should be validated, and should not be thrown under the rug simply because it was only an individual experience and not a general experience, or to the statistics or whatever else we want to point to. That is definitely something we want to acknowledge. SAs, domestic violence, all these other kinds of issues and things and experiences that clearly have a way of programming someone to believe that this is how someone else is approaching them in certain public spaces. It has truly broken my heart as a single man, growing man, to encounter TikTok videos and women experiencing these things just from going to a gas station, a grocery store, and just handling day-to-day duties. And somebody chooses to objectify them to the point where they feel they have the right to cross a boundary at the sake of pleasure, to violate a boundary for the sake of pleasure. It's a very sad thing. And I really do think that there needs to be room to have conversations like these to perhaps get to what could potentially be the root behind it, as to why perspectives like this carry on longer than maybe they should, or at least they are given room to. And so my whole point in bringing all of this up is that it's experienced in the dating space. It's experienced in dating culture and connections and relationships that I feel like in a lot of ways has hindered women from feeling like they could even have any kind of connection or relative relationship with a guy, because it's assumed that you're not friends with me just because you want to be friends with me. Like, you're not wanting to converse with me, have conversation with me, opening the door for me, bringing me gifts, paying for dinner. Like, you're not doing these things simply because from a pure gesture. Rather, it's assumed that you want something. It's always assumed that there's another agenda behind the scenes that's attached to the behavior that's shown. And to some extent, I would not say that you are crazy for thinking that at first, because it's something that you're used to seeing. It's something that you're expecting to see from somebody who you would say, yeah, they're clearly interested in me. They're paying for dinner, opening doors, bringing gifts, all those kinds of things. But I actually am interested in changing the perspective for a lot of us, because I think we've lost sight of what genuine love looks like among people and among relationships that we carry. It doesn't mean that I have to shower you with gifts. It doesn't mean that I have to shower you and do the most and above and beyond every time I encounter you. But what I do have an opportunity to do every time I encounter you is to show you in some way or form, through word and deed, of course, without getting sexually intimate, if that is not a lane that we're in, to let you know that you're appreciated, you're seen, you're loved, and you're valued in my life. And every time I reach out to you and say something that is of kind, courteous, I know and learn of your love languages, and I choose to serve that as a friend, or perhaps if it's something that is romantic, it does not mean that I want something from you. It just means it's an opportunity to serve you. Love is all about serving, not giving to get. And what we've done is we've kind of wired our brains through cultural experiences, through personal experiences, that people only do these things because they want something, not because they are someone, not because it's their identity, it's who they are and
Yeah.
what the relationship means to them. This is how I want to show that it's valuable to me. I've had people literally look up, it's crazy. I went to dinner one time. This is just a quick story before I get into the second point. I went to dinner, and at this same dinner, I was rejected after a pursuit, and I paid for the dinner. She looked at me like like I was crazy. Everything had been discussed. I was like, no, I got it. It's cool. I initially invited. This was something I wanted to do, regardless of where it landed. This is something I want to do. And she just looked at me with like the longest pause. I'm like, yeah, it's cool. I got it. It ain't an issue. Now, I can't tell you what exactly was going through her mind, but just from the body language and what was fed off, it seems as if there was a perspective of, well, I just kind of said I didn't want you in the manner that you wanted me. This wasn't something that went in your way. And you're still offering to do something that may seem to have romantic ties that's sending mixed signals. How about it could be just a perspective of, I invited you somewhere. This was a place that I wanted to honor the invitation. And I still have an opportunity to just show love and appreciation for the time that was spent by paying for a dinner that actually is little to nothing out of my pocket. It could be just that, right? And so I think there's so many stories that we run with based on people's behaviors towards us that comes from the second point I want to lead to and close with, and then kind of follow up with some more thoughts. Programming. There are 3 things of programming that I've learned. Shout out to Coach D for this, and it's stuck with me for a long time. ABCs of programming, things that are authoritative. Maybe it's your parents, teachers, counselors, mentors, pastors, leaders, whatever, whoever has authority in your life, who has the ability to tell you something and you don't even question it, you just do it. Okay, that's a programming aspect. Then there is the big or the traumatic experiences. Okay, again, I'll liken it to this example. Of course, there's so many realistic ones that we can think of. Of course, in this conversation, somebody were to walk in on you and you were butt naked, right? Like, boom, your brain takes a screenshot. It remembers it, and it begins to create different scenarios, blockages, and reasonings behind why you will never do this, that, and the third to put yourself in a position to perhaps have that happen to you again. It's a very traumatic experience. There's so many others we can liken it to. Of course, in this conversation, we've talked about domestic violence, SA, all those kinds of things, real life experiences that cause traumatic responses, that explains why you do what you do because of what happened. Then you have constant. These are constant messages you've heard. You heard PD, Coach D mentioned a little bit earlier ago how women have grown up in purity culture that has wrongfully only been suited for them. And the men get to go and do whatever, but the woman has to dress appropriately. Got to cover your elbows, got to cover your shoulders, because we don't want your shoulder out, because if your shoulder's out, somebody's going to get hard and pounce on you. Like, it's ridiculous, right? But then men are able to go and have sex with someone and then not get called up to the church to the same degree that the woman is, for having to explain to the church that she's pregnant, or vice versa, because there are men who have had to go up to the front of the church and explain that they got someone pregnant, all for the sake of saving name for somebody in the church. It's very, very tragic, but it's a constant message that's repeated in your mind. Don't, do. It just continues to form a message in your mind that you just believe. It's something I've heard repetitively, I've heard for a long time, therefore this is just what I believe and see. All these different areas of programming, authoritative, big, and constant, that has a way of programming you on how you navigate and how you see this life moving forward from your own experiences and the experiences of others. I say all those things because I think it's important in these kinds of conversations to unpack what has programmed you to believe that is the case, that every time something affectionate is taking place, that must mean this person only wants what's in my pants. What has led you to believe that? How long have you believed that? And are you willing, as Coach D alluded to get help in any kind of way, to get some insight and some direction to unpack those things healthily and move forward in that? And I think, regarding dating experiences, friendship experiences, y'all really not gonna like me for saying this, but I think culture has had a way of seeping so much into the body that we have made decisions to forego relationships with opposite sex because we want to obey the Billy Graham rule, right? Hey, listen, I'm not even gonna be in friendship and connection and relationship with this person because I don't even want anything assumed of me. Now, again, granted, I think there's so much context where that is applicable, but to us who are single and just need community and just need people to rock with and to do life with, I need us to be willing to see one another as brothers and sisters. If there's anywhere in life where you ought to be able to have friendships with the opposite sex and be able to look somebody in the face and say, I love you and don't want to have sex with you, it needs to be in the kingdom. That has to be in the kingdom. And the fact that that isn't is a struggle for me, because then we always come into these spaces assuming somebody's dating who, having sex with who, because they sit together and they do things together, and we're just automatically tying it to romantic ties instead of, hey, those are just two people who find a lot of commonalities with one another, have community with one another, and just desire to see the best out of one another. And it doesn't have to go to romantic ties in order for it to be official and legitimate. Some people don't like you, bro. Some people don't find you attractive, bro, but they are kind and generous to you because they know who you are as a person and just want to be friends. What is entirely wrong with that? I have yet to figure it out. But something I've learned and I've grown from is that every smile and every positive message and every, anything of that sort that comes from a woman does not mean that she automatically, man, she wants the D. Like, bro, what? No, that can't be the case. And I think we do a lot of assuming based on programming instead of really trying to understand the person's motive and behavior in the moment due to who they are to me as an individual and in this relationship. And how can I actually maximize that and honor this space given that's reflective of where we want to go, who we want to be, and maximizing this to the best of its ability. And that's kind of where I'm first headed in this kind of conversation.
Yeah. Again, man, this is a big issue, and I want to be sensitive to some of the women because I do believe that they have been mistreated. I also believe that we haven't done a good job either of raising young men to be
that part
respectful and to know first of all how to value themselves and then value women, because the reality of it is now is what you guys call dating for those in your age is hooking up and then just hooking up with somebody else, and everybody just hooks up. Nobody really moves into a space of getting to know the other person, connecting. It's all about sex and different things along those lines, which is tragic, to be honest with you. But one of the things that I also think that why I would say women is really important for them to really work through this process is because the fact of the matter is, man, Sean, women always are the ones who hold the greatest consequence to intimacy. Okay,
that's a good one.
And so because they hold the greatest consequence to intimacy, man, there's oftentimes been a lot of challenges and struggles with them overcoming those messages and encounters that they've had with men, from the whistles walking down the street, from dudes who you barely meet. I've watched it. These dudes will look you up and down. They'll look at your breast. They'll look at your butt. They'll watch you walk by. It can, and I have daughters. So this could be a pretty challenging, situation, real challenging struggle for women. But I think that to her point about, your husband, somebody who you got married to, I do believe, ladies, and I say this respectfully, that if you have some trauma around intimacy and things along those lines, my encouragement to you is to make sure that you go and start to find some help and some support to be able to do that. Because I don't think it's fair for your husband to be sincerely genuine in his approach to you. He's married to you. Perhaps he touches you on your backside while he's walking past you here in the kitchen. That's just a married thing. That's not a, hey, you got a minute. On the same hand, it could be, hey, you got a minute. But if you're not healthy enough because of some of the own challenges that you have, then you're going to take that in a very difficult and challenging way. And so, again, all the things that I mentioned before, I know those are some real issues. And I would tell you that, one of the comments in there I thought was great from the lady in the comment section. She's like, if you dislike your husband that much, that you don't want to have sex with him, you shouldn't be married to him. I'll be totally honest with you. If you don't have any kind of physical issue, you're not sick, you don't have any kind of challenges like that, but you're with a man that you're just like, I'm just not going to have sex with this person, whatever, then why are you with them? Like, why are you this is a natural thing. It's not unnatural for two people to come together and be intimate. But to her point, to the topic that we're discussing, the lady who initial video, it's, hey man, she said a lot of right things there. And I think it's important. One guy in there says, if you are the second person, you're always going to be second. You're never going to be first. This does happen once a lot of women have kids, though. Again, like I said, man, they have kids and they're like, my kids are my priority, not you. This is why you see people, Sean, end up getting a divorce after 35, 40 years of marriage, and their kids are like, Like what's happening right here? Like what are y'all doing? Like it's because they never invested time in each other. So they actually don't know each other. It really was a transactional relationship. You give me kids in the house and help me raise them, but now I want to go off and do what I want to do because my kids are gone. So I really don't need you because I never connected with you. So I don't need to have a relationship with you. And I'm looking for somebody other than you. I just put up with you because you were here. That's a story I've heard as well. So those are just facts. And that leads to a lot of the challenges and struggles that I think that people have in this space where their approach from their husband is problematic for them. Now, last thing, if a guy is abusive emotionally, mentally, spiritually, financially, relationally, whatever, then of course, ma'am or sir, yeah, who wants to be sleeping with somebody who does that? Nobody. That's just the reality.
Yeah. And last thing I'll share on it too is I think what you spoke to there, and I had some thoughts on that literally this morning, the resentment piece. I'm sure there will be some videos and things like that we'll react to later on down the line of why people think divorce rates are so high.
70% of women initiate divorce, by the way. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, and that's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, all right, so some of it is, okay, the same reservations that you had that were there when you were dating are the same reservations that are present that you thought would change. It didn't. And so now here we are some years later after the marriage with opposite lawyers on opposite ends of the table talking about who's getting what. Because we weren't honest about it. I had a lady, man, who sent me a message after I posted a video on my page. Definitely shameless plug. Shout out to the TikTok down in the description below to give a follow to both Coach D and I. There was a woman who sent me a message after I posted a message about ownership in the breakup. Yeah, I know we love to envision the other person as the enemy because we're hurt, but what role did you play in how the relationship fell apart? And she sent me a message because she resonated so much with it on how the divorce took place in her marriage. And she basically explained to me how there were so much that she was banking on potential, but she was banking so much on potential that she was ignoring what was, knowing he was not her type. And that blew my mind, but in a good way, because how many times are we willing to move in authentically just to have what we hope can be and not what is? And it's a very huge challenge for relationships today because the same resentment you had in the beginning is the same one that shows up later on. Why fool yourself? Why act as if you have the capacity and the power to change somebody into something they aren't and something they don't have the capacity to be? You're banking on what can, not what is. And then secondly, I think, people are just marrying people they don't genuinely like, man. And it's unfortunate. Like, you don't like this person. Like you like the way they make you feel, but you don't like this person. And the fact that you are moving in this way, it's telling to me. How can you actually be okay with walking down the aisle and making a lifetime commitment to somebody who you genuinely don't like, but you're hoping in some way, again, going back to the first part, that something in them will change, that will become attractive to you. Physical attraction and those kinds of things play a role in who you marry. I don't ever want to degrade or dismiss that. I don't think it's something that should prioritize over necessarily purpose and calling, alignment and assignment, but I do think they do go hand in hand. But when I say like I don't understand that aspect of making a commitment to somebody you don't even like. That is something that you have to be willing to be honest about. And a lot of us aren't willing to call a spade a spade. This is what it is, and I need to move accordingly to it. Instead, we play ourselves, and that's how we end up in these divorces. So resentment, not liking one another, and just not being honest about where you are and what you're seeing compared to what you want there to be, and genuinely having conversations to let each other out, man. Like, do you think that marriages today would be preserved a lot longer if conversations like that were had earlier on for people to have an opportunity to see what they're walking into? Like vulnerability and having that, like, we're just such in a space for protecting ourselves that we don't know how to put up a good fight and go with somebody for 12 rounds. Imagine being a boxer and stepping into the ring and all you're doing is just sheltering. You don't ever throw a punch. You don't ever throw a strike. How do you win? A boxer stepping into a ring and hoping not to get hit, why are you boxing? A basketball player who's stepping onto a court and hopes to not dribble the basketball, to not catch it, to not make a move, to not make physical contact, why are you in the sport? Same with football. I mean, we can go on and on. We have to get into a place where we're willing to give people an opportunity to see who we are through the little nuggets we give them time after time and observe what they do with it, while also having an opportunity to connect and actually see for who we really are. Because just give somebody enough time, and enough humanity is going to spill out, and you're going to have an opportunity to genuinely choose where they belong in your life, whether in it or out of it. And we have to get to a place of not sparing feelings in the process of that. Like, you saying no is probably going to hurt people's feelings because they may want you and feel that they need you in order to survive. But if you know where you are, who you are, and where you're going, and that person doesn't align in it, you have to stand true to that and stop sparing feelings, making somebody think there's something there when really there isn't. And that's an issue. And so that's more of like an angle, an approach that I take to this conversation, not disregarding the marriage aspect of it, because I think you spoke to that very eloquently. And that's the beautiful thing about this podcast, coming from different perspectives. I just think this relates so much to dating, courtship, friendship, connection, because I think before we ever reach to a place of marriage, a lot of that stuff is rooted there beforehand. Having a connection, having a relationship, a friendship, anything of that sort. And too many of us are wrapping and connecting love to this aspect of, well, women only do this to get, men only do this to get. We generalize, and we don't come to a place of truth to actually see, okay, what does it really mean to be loving to somebody, to give for the purpose of giving, and really actually putting myself in a position to where I can be as healthy as possible, to where I can navigate in a relationship and not feel as if somebody making something towards me means that they automatically want something from me. And if it comes from past experiences, I think it's important to address those and be gracious to yourself in addressing those. Don't have high expectations that you're supposed to be over something that may have really, really damaged you greatly. It's important to process those things and get the help that's needed. But to play as if, I don't like this person, I got a lot of reservations to this, there's nothing wrong with you, and you're moving in this way, that's scary. Really, really scary.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So listen, we appreciate you guys so much for this conversation. We hope you guys got a lot out of it. Be sure to subscribe, like this video, share with a friend who could be beneficial or who could benefit from hearing this message, along with so many other videos and things that we've got going on over on this channel dedicated to bringing Christ to culture and talking about viral clips that just spark conversation that's important to be had for us to live better lives. All right. So we appreciate you guys so much. And until our next conversation, be easy and be breezy. Peace.
Peace.